Profits. It's not unusual to hear others in the industry complain about design professionals squeezing their profit margins. But at the same time, though it's rarely noted, there is something to be said for the steady stream of business they can provide. They are minimizing your overhead and thus saving you marketing dollars. Let design professionals use your showroom as a meeting place. Often they don't have a good space to meet with clients on neutral ground. Providing the space to them can have huge benefits. We have a very high-end retail showroom that we will let any architect, interior designer, any design professional come and use to meet with a client at any particular time, because anytime I get an opportunity to expose people to our product increases the opportunity for us to increase our sales. I have an interior designer that uses our showroom on a regular basis, and she used to feel bad about it because she would meet with clients to show them paint and wallpaper and pictures of furniture and fabric stuff on a project or drapery samples. In fact, she would also oftentimes have her drapery person meet her in our showroom too. And she would call me and apologize. You know, I hate to use your showroom. They're not doing any cabinetry, blah, blah, blah. And I would always tell her, listen, I just want you to know that when you're ready to, when you have a client that's ready to do some cabinetry, I know that you're going to come and see me because you feel like you owe me at least the opportunity. So consequently, we share our showroom on a regular basis with anyone who needs to use it. In fact, I have a general contractor that called me up a couple of months ago, and we have just opened up a new showroom in downtown Chicago. And he had a client that he was doing some work with, remodeling a bathroom, and wanted to show them some plumbing fixtures. And those plumbing fixtures he was buying from a plumbing supply house, but they were on display in our showroom. Wasn't going to buy anything from me. Wanted to know if he could take the client through the showroom, use my conference room. I said, absolutely, anytime. Sent me a set of plans the other day for a $150,000 project. And after I sent him the bid back, he called me up. He says, you know, by the way, I didn't send that to anyone else to bid. He says, I knew that I'm trusting you're going to give me a fair price on this. It's all about building those relationships. Understanding your role. When you provide input, when to provide input and when you do as you are asked is an important part of developing relationships with design professionals. When to provide input and when to do as you're asked is an important part of developing relationships with design professionals. Do they value good craftsmanship and management and accept the fact that these come at a price? Will they be able to provide prompt answers to questions during the various phases of the project? If you successfully complete a project, will they be interested in using you again on future projects on a basis other than competitive bidding? Be wary of the designer, and that's in quotation marks, who asks you to bid a project for a friend of mine. Oftentimes, these are not true professionals, and these relationships can be full of pitfalls. A number of years ago, I had an interior designer who reached out to me that I had never heard of before, told me that she was, large, high-profile interior design person and had some stuff that she needed done in her house. Like, well, if she's a high-end interior design professional, I've never heard of her. She wants me to bid on some stuff in her house. I'm wondering what her relationship is, or if she has a relationship with any other woodworkers. So she sent me some plans, and I did some pricing and sent her the pricing over to her, and she sent me back a purchase order for 50% of my bid price, crossed out my price, wrote in the price that was 50% off, and put a note on there that said 50% trade discount. Well, I promptly mailed her a check back to her and called her on the phone, and I told her, I said, I didn't understand what she meant by sending me a purchase order and crossing out my pricing. And she says, well, I just figured that was your standard pricing, that, just like furniture that we buy in the merchandise mart or whatever, that we were going to get a 50% discount because that's standard industry practice. Well, needless to say, I haven't heard from her anymore and don't know if anyone else is doing any work for her. Much of our work is based on trust. Nothing can ruin this trust quicker than commenting to the owner, "See how the architect or the designer drew this?" Questions or comments of this sort need to be directed directly to the design professional. Keep in mind that oftentimes you only do one large and then maybe a few small projects for any particular owner in their lifetime, but completing successful work for a design professional can provide you with multiple projects each and every year. I have been on a number of projects where a general contractor would commented to an owner about the way an architect designed something and found out that the word got back to the architect that his work was being criticized by the general contractor on the job, actually was involved in a project where the architect was instrumental in having the general contractor fired, specifically because the architect's ego was such that he just could not allow the contractor to criticize his work. Contracts. Purchase orders sent from designers do not provide a proper forum for building relationships. It's important that you enter into a contract for each and every project. This protects not only you, but the design professional and the client from a potential bad outcome. Never do any work on a project without a signed contract. Our company policy here states that if we receive a purchase order from an interior designer, and we get them from general contractors occasionally too, that triggers, the only thing that does is it triggers our accounting department to generate a contract that they send back, and this is our standard contract, that we send back to be reviewed by them and signed off on. We never, ever do any work off of purchase orders. Oftentimes interior designers, not so much architects, but oftentimes interior designers send purchase orders to purchase all sorts of items, whether it be furniture, wallpaper, draperies, any of those things. But we do not ever accept purchase orders as a form of a contract because there's just not enough legal information to protect us if something happens to go wrong. And without a signed contract, it can be difficult to collect your money or get in line to collect your money if in fact there's financial issues later. Contracts also help protect your lien rights later on in case that's ever an issue. Completion dates. It's always a good idea to immediately get a projected completion date for any particular project. That way you can work backwards and create an acceptable timeline of when critical decisions are required in order to keep the projects on schedule. Always provide this information in a timely manner to all parties involved. Sample submissions. Color matching and sample approvals are important. Even things as simple as laminate samples should be submitted in multiples for approval. Never take anything for granted. If the design professional provides a sample for you to match, you should then in turn prepare samples for their approval. Oftentimes they'll provide samples that are very small or old and ask you to match them, but make it a little more red. Or they may give you a piece of oak, but they want the project made in walnut, and they say, well, this is the color. This is the perfect example of why you need to take the time and go to the expense of providing samples for their approval. Never match their sample on the project. Match your sample. Always make sure you have a copy of the signed, approved sample in your possession. We always make a minimum of three samples of any particular color. So if we're submitting 2 or 3 color samples on a project, there's 3 of each particular one. So if there's 2 samples, there's 6. If there's 3, there's 9. We always keep 1 here and send 2 to the design professional. That way, if they need to give 1 to the owner and keep 1 for themselves. We will accept a scan of the back of the sample with a sign-off, with a signed approval and a date on it, but it will always be our sample. We never, ever will accept a different sample that they've sent to us to match under absolutely no circumstances. Generating shop drawings. Generating shop drawings, let's go back to samples. And this is, as you see on the screen, this is an example of someone's label that they put on the back of their color sample. And you can see the note there, and this is important to note too. It says the sample must be viewed in the same location, at the same angle, and same lighting conditions as the final product. Due to the nature of wood, finishes, and lighting, there may be a certain degree of variation in shade and grain pattern between this sample and the final product. These variations are nature's trademark and are not reason for replacement. Some type of disclaimer on your sample labels is always of great use because, as we all know, wood varies from piece to piece. We always make sure that our submitted samples are at least 8 inches by 10 inches large too. We don't submit samples that are 2 by 3 or 3 by 5 or 5 by 7. They're always large, and they always are representative of the material that we're going to use on any particular project. Generating shop drawings. Generating shop drawings is preparing detailed drawings where the information is derived from the client's drawings and/or specifications and pertains to your portion of the job. This is to convey to the client what the product will look like when it's completed. In addition, it is used by the shop when ordering materials and fabricating product. Never proceed with fabrication without signed, approved shop drawings and samples. Shop drawings, if you commonly work with homeowners, your shop drawing process may be quite different than the shop drawing process is with an architect or an interior design firm, where you have to show vertical, horizontal sections through cabinetry and all that stuff. We never start a project without approved shop drawings. The other thing is, oftentimes, if we receive approved drawings back that are marked up to a degree that we're uncomfortable with, we will in turn resubmit those shop drawings, although they were technically approved, resubmit them for a second view and approval, just to make sure that we've picked up what their changes or design intent was properly. One of the things that we're seeing more and more all the time in the electronic age is that we'll submit PDF copies of 24 by 36 drawings, and oftentimes, especially with interior designers, they may not have the ability to print out those large size drawings, and so they'll print our 24 by 36 pages on 11 by 17s and in turn mark them up. It's scary because they can't see all the detail that we've provided, and so oftentimes we'll take a little bit extra time, go back and meet with them with a full-size set of drawings to make sure that we absolutely have all of those details correct. With that, I'm going to tell you what the top 5 follow-ups are, I think, off of this seminar. And number 1 is contact my current architects and designers and set up a meeting to review their current samples and specification. Number 2 would be to set up a company-wide policy to make sure that all of your work involving design professionals proceeds in a uniform manner. Number 3 would be to review your shop drawing procedure to make sure that you're providing the information that the design professionals require. Number 4, make sure that you're using signed contracts, and in all cases, and never working from a purchase order. And number 5 would be to review your current sample submission process to assure that all samples are submitted in a uniform manner. It's the end of my presentation now, and we can go to questions and answers. I'm not sure if we have any yet.